10 rulers, ranked by the terror they unleashed on their own people. From regimes built on surveillance and starvation to those that industrialized genocide itself, this countdown traces how absolute power consumed entire nations. Some held control for decades. Others needed only years to produce death tolls that still defy comprehension. We begin at number 10, a liberation hero who turned freedom's promise into 37 years of fear. In the 10th place, Robert Mugabe transformed Zimbabwe's liberation hopes into nearly 4 decades of fear and decline. The Gukurahundi campaign in the 1980s saw the 5th Brigade massacre an estimated 20,000 civilians in Matabeleland, silencing dissent with bullets and mass graves. 2 decades later, Mugabe's fast-track land reform forced about 2 million people from their homes, collapsing the economy and triggering famine. Elections became rituals of violence, with opposition supporters beaten, tortured, or disappeared by ZANU-PF loyalists. Mugabe's reign ended in 2017 with a military-backed coup, but the scars of state-sponsored terror and economic ruin remain. A hero's legacy, rewritten as a warning, revolutionary credentials can cloak decades of repression. Number 9. Saddam Hussein's grip on Iraq was forged through militarized terror and the calculated use of chemical weapons against his own people. In 1988, the Halabja gas attack killed at least 5,000 Kurdish civilians, searing the name of a small town into the world's memory. This was only a fraction of the devastation. The Anfal campaign scorched northern Iraq, with tens of thousands more Kurds executed or vanished as villages were razed. At the heart of this machinery stood the Mukhabarat, Saddam's sprawling secret police, orchestrating disappearances and torture on an industrial scale. Under his rule from 1979 to 2003, fear became a weapon as lethal as any bomb. It was a regime that proved the modern state could turn scientific progress into a tool for genocide. In 8th place, Nicolae Ceausescu's Romania became a nation where fear was woven into daily life. The Securitate, his secret police, grew so vast that 1 in 9 citizens was an informer, over 500,000 people watching neighbors, colleagues, even family. By the late 1980s, economic austerity meant bread rationed to 150 grams a day, electricity cut to a trickle, and supermarket shelves bare. Speaking out meant prison or worse, but silence brought only hunger and suspicion. In December 1989, after days of violent protest and over 1,000 deaths, Ceausescu and his wife faced a televised trial and execution on Christmas Day. The legacy of his rule is not just empty pantries, but a society scarred by suspicion, a reminder that total control can suffocate a nation without firing a single shot. Number 7. Muammar Gaddafi's 42-year grip on Libya was enforced by an architecture of fear that reached from oil-funded palaces to the darkest corners of his secret prisons. The revolutionary committees, Gaddafi's grassroots enforcers, monitored every neighborhood, rooting out dissent with arbitrary arrests and disappearances. In 1996, the Abu Salim prison massacre marked the regime's most chilling atrocity. Around 1,200 inmates were gunned down in a single day, their bodies never returned to families, their names erased from official records. Human rights groups estimate thousands more vanished under his rule, swept up by security brigades, and never seen again. Gaddafi's regime exported terror abroad and crushed it at home, until a wave of revolt in 2011 ended with his extrajudicial execution that was broadcast to a world that had watched his power endure for generations. 4 decades of surveillance and violence collapsed in the dust of Sirte, a warning of how absolute rule can outlast nearly everything except the rage of the silenced. Number 6. Kim Jong-il's rule in North Korea forged a dynasty where fear was inherited as much as power. From 1994 to 1998, the arduous March famine swept through the country, with United Nations estimates placing the death toll between 1 million and 2 million, an atrocity shaped by deliberate state policy and isolation. While the world looked away, the regime's Kwanliso prison camps expanded, holding up to 120,000 people in conditions of forced labor, torture, and near starvation. Daily life was governed by the Songbun caste system, a secret classification that determined access to food, jobs, and even survival, dividing families into loyal and suspect for generations. When Kim Jong-il died in 2011, he left behind not just a legacy of famine and repression, but a hereditary system that weaponized loyalty and fear. In North Korea, terror became a family tradition, sealed behind borders that let almost nothing out except rumors of suffering. Number 5. Idi Amin's 8-year rule in Uganda unleashed a wave of terror that claimed between 100,000 and 500,000 lives. His rise began with a military coup on January 25, 1971, toppling Milton Obote and installing Amin as president. Almost overnight, Uganda became a nation ruled by fear. Death squads hunted political opponents, while mass graves filled with bodies, leaving no doubt about the cost of dissent. In 1972, Amin ordered the expulsion of nearly 60,000 Asians, seizing their businesses and triggering economic collapse. Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International estimate that hundreds of thousands vanished, killed in purges, torture chambers, or simply disappeared. Refugee accounts describe a country where loyalty was demanded at gunpoint, and where suspicion meant a death sentence. Amin's regime ended abruptly in 1979 when Tanzanian forces invaded, but the legacy of his brutality lingers. In Uganda, a coup proved how quickly a nation can descend into bloodshed, and how terror can become law in a matter of days. Number 4. Pol Pot's reign in Cambodia stands as one of history's most chilling experiments in ideological extremism. In April 1975, the Khmer Rouge swept into Phnom Penh, declaring the start of Year Zero and forcing millions from cities into brutal rural communes. Over the next 4 years, between 1.7 and 2.2 million people, nearly a quarter of Cambodia's population, were executed, worked to death, or starved under his vision of an agrarian utopia. The S-21 prison, better known as Tuol Sleng, became a factory of torture and death, with only a handful of survivors from over 12,000 recorded prisoners. The regime's killing fields turned the countryside into a landscape of mass graves. Pol Pot's rule ended abruptly when Vietnamese forces ousted him in January 1979, but the trauma lingers in every Cambodian family. Here, the pursuit of purity became a blueprint for annihilation. Coming to the top 3, Mao Zedong's rule over China stands as the deadliest in modern history, driven not only by direct violence, but by catastrophic policies enforced with absolute authority. From 1958 to 1962, the Great Leap Forward unleashed a famine that killed an estimated 15 million to 45 million people. And scholarly consensus, including Frank Dictators' demographic studies, places the total excess deaths toward the upper end of that range. The Cultural Revolution from 1966 to 1976 saw millions more persecuted, humiliated, or killed by mobs of Red Guards acting under his personal encouragement. The Laogai forced labor camps, modeled on Soviet gulags, held millions in conditions where starvation, torture, and overwork were routine. Official Chinese figures remain contested, but the scale of suffering is beyond dispute. Entire villages vanished, intellectuals were driven to suicide, and families were torn apart in the name of revolutionary purity. Mao died on September 9, 1976, leaving a legacy where state-driven ideology proved as lethal as any firing squad. In Mao's China, policy itself became a weapon, one that turned utopian promises into a graveyard. Number 2, Joseph Stalin weaponized bureaucracy to industrialize fear across the Soviet Union. Between 1937 and 1938, the Great Purge carried out by the NKVD swept through every city and village, with over 1 million people arrested and at least 680,000 executed on charges as thin as a rumor or a grudge. RGASPI arrest lists and Moscow show trial transcripts reveal a regime where paperwork became a death sentence, signatures, quotas, and confessions extracted under torture. Forced collectivization in Ukraine and Kazakhstan triggered the Holodomor and other famines that killed millions, starvation as state policy enforced by grain seizures and blacklists. The Gulag archipelago grew into a vast network of labor camps where up to 2 million perished from exhaustion, disease, and exposure. By the time Stalin died on March 5, 1953, the death toll from purges, famine, and forced labor stood somewhere between 9 million and 20 million, a range still debated by scholars. In Stalin's hands, modern administration became an engine of mass murder, proving that terror could be systematized and genocide carried out with a rubber stamp as easily as with a gun. And finally, in first place, 6 million Jews and millions more perished under Adolf Hitler's genocidal war machine. Appointed chancellor on January 30th, 1933, Hitler wasted no time consolidating power. The Enabling Act of March 23, 1933 gave him the authority to rule by decree, transforming Germany into a dictatorship almost overnight. The Gestapo and SS became instruments of terror, hunting down political opponents, enforcing racial laws, and orchestrating mass arrests. On January 20th, 1942, at the Wannsee Conference, senior Nazi officials formalized the final solution, setting the machinery of industrialized murder into motion. Trains carried entire communities to extermination camps, Auschwitz, Treblinka, Sobibor, where gas chambers operated at a scale the world had never seen. The Holocaust claimed 6 million Jewish lives, but the death toll soared higher. Millions of Poles, Roma, Soviet prisoners, and other civilians died through forced labor, starvation, and mass shootings. The Gestapo's orders, preserved in the Bundesarchiv, reveal a regime that normalized cruelty through bureaucracy. When Berlin fell in April 1945, Hitler chose suicide over surrender, leaving behind a legacy of devastation and moral ruin. The Nazi regime stands as the apex of state-engineered murder, a warning of what becomes possible when ideology, technology, and absolute power fuse into terror. Across all 10 regimes, one pattern endures. Fear weaponized is the dictator's lifeblood. When terror becomes law, society itself is shattered and truth erased. The lesson is stark. Unchecked power always demands a human price. History's darkest rulers remind us silence and obedience are never protection, only warning signs.